July, I took a 2-week trip through British Columbia, and I decided that for this trip, I wanted to create a travel sketchbook journal, a place where I could document some of my favorite moments and views and things that I spotted on the trip. And it ended up being such a treasure. I'm so proud of the spreads that I created, and I'm really excited to share with you the process that I used to make this whole little sketchbook journal. Everything from how I planned it, what supplies I was gonna bring, how I planned out the layouts, what I chose to take photos and get references of, as well as just how to make the whole project look cohesive and visually appealing so it's something that you'll treasure forever. If you're new to this channel, my name is Katie and I run a little art shop called Fun Gal Studio, and on this channel I make art and art business focused videos. I really want to emphasize how important it is to plan ahead of time to do something like this. If I had just brought a sketchbook and a bunch of random supplies, I don't think I would have been able to create a travel sketchbook that I was really excited of and proud of. The reason is because I think that part of why my spreads turned out as nice as they did is because I did a cohesive color palette, and to do that you have to plan what supplies you're going to bring ahead of time. I spent quite a bit of time working with my supplies, figuring out what kinds of colors I wanted to work with, what would give me enough variety to document the kinds of things I knew I would probably be seeing. I used Pinterest to help me get some ideas of what some good like summery color palettes look like, because my trip is in the summer, but you could absolutely do more like spring, fall, winter kind of palette if that's what you're going for, or just like a general vibe. Think about ahead of time what kind of overall look you want all of the pieces to have. And of course they don't all have to match. I personally just really like it, and I like how they all kind of go together. For my color palette, I ended up centering it around a nice warm mossy green, because this is kind of like my go-to color in everything all the time. So I knew if I didn't have that color, I was really gonna miss it. And then from there, I chose some other colors that would work nicely with it. I wanted to have a nice mix of cool and warm shades. I did make sure that I had lots of variety of green tones, both from like a warm to a cool and light to dark shades, because I knew I was going to be painting a lot of nature scenes and lots of green is best for that. I also made sure that I had a blue that mixed really well with my palette. I ended up having like a nice warm, almost like periwinkle kind of blue in my palette. And I experimented with it a lot before I left on the trip to make sure that I was happy with how the colors looked together, because once I packed up my supplies and left for the road, that was all I was gonna have to work with the whole time I was there. So definitely make sure you put as much thought into it ahead of time as you can to increase the likelihood that you're gonna like what you work with. Another thing that's really important is to consider mediums that will travel really well. So for me, my main medium was dried gouache, and with me I brought a handful of brushes that I use specifically for travel that are packed up in a way that they don't get damaged. And I also brought a little spray bottle to reactivate the gouache whenever I had a moment to sit down and paint, as well as a little jar that I would refill with water whenever it started to get dirty. I also brought colored pencils and markers, because those are very travel friendly. But if you are more into like acrylic or oil paints, those are definitely things that are a lot harder to bring with you when you're traveling, so it might be worth considering leaning into something that you know will travel a little easier. For most of this sketchbook, the way that I worked was I would take photos along the way as we were traveling around, and then whenever I had a moment here and there, sometimes when we were camping, I would wake up early in the morning and sit at our little picnic bench and lay out a spread, or we would be sitting in a cafe, so I would get some water and sit down and do some work with the gouache. But some people really like to do kind of more the en plein air live painting sort of thing. I personally was on tour with my band for this trip, so we were very busy, and sitting down to do a full painting with the scene in front of me just wasn't realistic for the trip that I was on. That is absolutely an option. It is a little bit harder, I find, to have a good setup for that, but if you have the supplies, absolutely, that's a really nice way to document your travels. What I would do is just as we walked around, explored, adventured, anytime I saw something that I thought that will look good in my sketchbook later, I would just snap a photo of it, and I started putting them all in a folder in my Photos app on my phone, so they're easy to go back to and access later. Something that really helped is ahead of time I thought about what kind of things I would want to put in my sketchbook, so that while I was traveling and busy thinking about other things, it was sitting in the back of my mind that, oh, I want to make sure I get photos of birds or flowers or nice landscape scenes. And just because I had thought about it ahead of time, it was available in the back of my mind and encouraging me to remember to take those photos when those moments would come up, so that I could just snap the photo and then have it ready for when I did have a good moment to sit down and paint. The main subjects that I focused on taking photos of and putting in my sketchbook were nature-y landscapes, occasionally like buildings and that kind of thing. I did lots of creatures and critters and plants and flowers. Also, food items are a really fun thing to snap photos of and document later, especially if you have a meal that you really love. It's nice to like look back at your art of it and remember it. You could also take photos of people and do some portraits. Those are fun. I didn't do that as much because I find I get more frustrated with my portrait work more easily, so I just wanted this sketchbook to be a little safer so I know I'd be happy with the end result. You could also work with other design or artwork things that you see in your travels that inspire you, but always be careful copying other people's artwork. Just be mindful of making sure you make it your own. In my experience, one of the hardest things to do when you're trying to make a visually appealing sketchbook is how you lay out your pages. So I'm going to tell you what I did and what worked for me. Generally, you want to think about the biggest things on the page first, I find. So most of my spreads included at least one like rectangular or squared landscape. So I would lay that part out first, and then I would pick 2 to 3 other items to fill the page with from the same place where that landscape image was from. At this point, your spread's not gonna look good yet. You've got like a random box and you've got a couple of random items, but what kind of brings it all together is next you can choose if you're gonna put a title on the page, where that's gonna go, and that can do a really nice job filling out a gap on the page. And then after that, what I really loved about this sketchbook journal style is any open spaces, I would just add in the text writing to fill out what we did in those places, little memories from the trip. And it was a really interesting creative exercise actually, because not only did I have to decide what I was going to document like verbally from that part of the trip, but also I was working with limited space sometimes, so it was really interesting to pick and choose what I would write and how I would write it to fill the space. And then at the end, if you have any awkward spaces left over, add some sparkles, little flowers, little hearts, like whatever kind of doodles you like to add, and it just makes the whole thing come together. As I mentioned, we were on a fairly busy trip. We were playing lots of shows and traveling to different places pretty much every single day. And so I didn't end up actually finishing all of my spreads while I was on the road. I had to do my last couple when I got home, and there was even more ideas I had that I didn't end up doing because there was just too much other work to do when I got home. So I just want to put out there that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a ton of pages for it to be something that's really special that you treasure. And it also doesn't all have to be done while you're on the road. I had this kind of block in my head where I was like, oh, it doesn't count if I don't do it while I'm traveling. But no, that's just me being too hard on myself and trying to be perfectionistic about something that doesn't need me to be. Just do it in whatever way makes sense for you and works best for you, and let yourself just enjoy and appreciate the work that you've done to commemorate your travels, and don't put too much pressure on yourself. I would love to hear if you're going to try out making a travel sketchbook, and I would love to hear where you're going that you're going to be trying to make the pages for. If you end up posting them somewhere, also make sure to tag me because I would really love to see them. Over on my Patreon, along with this video, I've created kind of a secondary video where I go more in depth of how I created my specific spreads, what I used for inspiration, why I chose the colors that I chose, exactly kind of step by step how I created each of my spreads. So if that's something you want to see, definitely pop over there and check it out. I also want to say a big thank you to the patrons who have already joined me over there. Whether you're a free or a paid member, your support means a lot to me, and I couldn't do what I do without you. If you have any other questions or you're looking for other suggestions of what you could do and what you could bring for your travel sketchbook, I would love to try and answer in the comments. If you've made it this far, it would mean a lot if you could leave a like on the video and perhaps subscribe so you can see when there's more going on this channel. If you want to stay in touch between YouTube videos, you can find me on Instagram or Blue Sky. Those are the best places to keep up to date with what I'm up to. Thanks for being here, my friends. Your time, attention, and kindness mean the world, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!